What's up, guys? So, today I'm going to talk about Eastern spirituality, specifically Taoism, and how it has influenced my path through recovery and my life in general. So, if those of you who are maybe listening to me for the first time don't know this, I lived in mainland China for full time for over 5 years. I lived in Shenzhen, which is a southern city right next to Hong Kong, and also in Beijing for a little over a year, and traveled widely. So, I'm going to talk about what I learned about Taoism. I'm going to talk about the Book of the Way, which is sort of the foundational text of Taoism. And I'm also going to talk about Eckhart Tolle's book called The Power of Now, which, if you are eye rolling right now, I have sympathy with that because I refused to read it for years, despite hearing a lot of people in recovery mention it, because I thought it would be like a sort of bog-standard regurgitation of generic Buddhist concepts, which in some ways it is, but as I'll get to, a very useful regurgitation of those concepts in the modern context and modern language. And I'm also going to share with you one really short exercise which we can do together from The Power of Now, which literally produced like one of the strongest spiritual revelations that I've had in my life, which shockingly has not contained many spiritual epiphanies. So I am just a guy. I am not claiming to be like a spiritually evolved person. I am probably less spiritually evolved than the average person, but I certainly try. And I think in some ways it's helpful to hear from just like someone who's not a monk, especially someone who is struggling with addiction and other things that can really like sort of cloud your own sense of purpose and presence, and just to share with each other what works. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about what Daoism, which we sometimes refer to as Taoism in English, is. So again, the main text is from the 4th century BC. It is supposedly written by an older homie of Confucius who is called Lao-Tzu in English. So there's some debate about whether this guy actually ever lived, which is kind of interesting, but it doesn't really matter for what I'm talking about today, so I won't get into that too much. But basically, the impact of Taoism, along with later on the Buddhism that was sort of it was infused with on Eastern culture, especially in China, is like it's incalculable. And what a lot of people, especially foreigners who have spent a lot of time in mainland China, will tell you, and what my expat friends and I from all over the world used to comment on to each other, is that as hard as life is in China, Chinese people have this chill, they have this sense of peace and acceptance. It can come across as a passivity, but Chinese are not passive people, they're very active, ambitious people, but it can seem almost passive how much they accept what's going on in the world, particularly when it doesn't necessarily benefit them at the time. And I remember saying to my dad during one conversation after I had been in China for like a year, it's like the way Chinese people are, it's almost closer to the way that I would imagine people living in in sort of practicing like true Christianity, meaning the things that Christ himself advocated for in the New Testament. It's almost closer to that than I think what a lot of Christian people in the West achieve, because we've got this very bad faith, very judgmental and toxic version of Christianity going on, especially in the U.S., that I think should be called out more often than it is. But won't get into that right now. So anyway, this Taoist spiritual philosophy kind of stemmed from this book called the Dao De Jing. We call it the Tao Te Ching sometimes in English. So it means the book of the way. And what does it talk about? It talks about Dao. It talks about Tao. So again, Dao means way. And in the book, it starts off with this sort of vague passage saying that, like, once you've named the Tao, I'm just going to use the very, Anglified pronunciations. It says, once you have name the Tao, once you've seen it, it's not the Tao anymore. And it's a book that consists of 81 short passages, and it has a lot of practical advice. It says a lot about how to govern properly, not instituting too many rules, because then your citizens will rebel. It talks a lot about how to be a proper parent and child, but it talks a lot about this Tao from which everything emanates, but the true nature of which is never directly accessible to limited immortal beings like we are. And because of that, its approach is to describe what the Tao is through metaphor. And there's a lot of focus on, I would say, the virtues of the Book of the Way are suppleness and balance, sort of moving with the universe rather than against it. There is this wonderful story that is in the sort of apocryphal tradition of Taoism, and it talks about how you will know someone who's living according to the Tao in this way. So if you have like a butcher, right, and he's got the knife that he uses to cut up the animal carcasses, someone who's just like a standard good butcher might need to sharpen his knife every day, you know. Someone who is a skilled butcher might need to do it once a week or once a month, but the man who truly understands the Tao will only need to sharpen his knife once a year. So that is, in my opinion, the perfect metaphor. It's this idea of like when your action is in line with what you're doing and the rest of the universe, and you're making sort of best use of what is out there in the universe that is in concordance with what you're trying to do, so much less action is required on your part, and you're so much more likely to succeed. So I think a lot of the reason why the Book of the Way is so popular among like CEOs and, you know, celebrities and just people, professional athletes are a big category who study the Tao and the Book of the Way. I think a big reason that that's true is it has a lot to do with like how to be maximally effective while expending minimal effort. And that story about the butcher and his knife is, I think, a really good like tangible illustration of what a lot of the Book of the Way talks about. It focuses a lot on dichotomies and specifically trying to show that they all come from the Tao. So like, you know, they might appear to be opposite, two parts of the dichotomy, but like really they support, balance, and reinforce each other. I should say too that the symbol of Taoism is the yin yang, right? So that circle that's divided into teardrop shaped halves of white and black, with a little white circle within the black section and a black circle within the white section. Like in that image, there is a very direct statement of the philosophy of Taoism, which again is focused on dichotomies, but it's focused on seeing the dichotomies as what they are, which is like ultimately they proceed from the same thing, kind of like love and hate, right? When people talk about love and hate both being such strong emotions and how quickly one can shift into the other when you're spurred or when your love is unrequited, that is a very Taoist interpretation of love. It also talks a lot about a harmonious state of spiritual flow. The whole idea of flow in the Western spiritual tradition is essentially just ripped off of Taoism. In the Tao Te Ching, it's mostly referred to as non-action. And again, it's that state in which every action is maximally impactful because it's, and requires minimal effort because it's undertaken like as part of the unfolding of the universe as a whole. So it's understanding when you can most effectively sync up what you're doing or trying to accomplish with what the rest of the universe is going to sort of going with the wave of the rest of the universe, if that makes sense. So I wrote down this quote by poet and translator Stephen Mitchell. So he said, "In this state," meaning the state of flow or non-action, "the game plays the game, the poem writes the poem. We can't tell the dancer from the dance. Nothing is done because the doer has wholeheartedly vanished into the deed. The fuel has been completely transformed into flame. The nothing is, in fact, everything. It happens when we trust the intelligence of the universe in the same way that an athlete or a dancer trusts the superior intelligence of the body." Now, I'm going to put a link to a pretty nice English translation of the Book of the Way with sort of commentary to help you understand the cultural context and specific translational issues in the description to this video. Mitchell himself has called these 81 short passages of the Book of the Way gem-like. And I think that's a perfect description for them because it's like when you think about these short, very powerful, succinct bits of wisdom, it's like light experience shines on them, and whatever situation that you're in life, you can think back on them those passages will sort of be lit up a different way. And by the way, the Book of the Way, you can read it in like 2 or 3 hours max. It is none of the moral grandstanding and the contradiction that we can find in the Christian Bible, especially when we take the New Testament together with the Old Testament and that we pretend that they're on equal footing, which again makes no sense if you're a Christian, but trying not to diatribe on that tonight. So yeah, so I highly, no matter who you are, I think you will find some. Genuinely believe you will find something worthwhile in the Book of the Way. If nothing else, it's very beautiful, poetic language that has a lot of truth in it about life. So again, it has profoundly influenced Chinese history and more broadly Eastern history, because Chinese culture is spread in every corner of Asia and really the world. But when Chinese people talk about Zhongguo, which is what they call their own country, the Middle Kingdom, yes, that was a name that came from the preeminence of China in trade. When you think of ancient world trading and the Silk Road and all the interaction between China and Japan and the rest of the world, like China really was in many ways the central kingdom. But it's no coincidence that they chose the Middle Kingdom, because Chinese people also love the idea of the middle path. They're not so much into the Western combating of extremes, that they're very into like the middle way. They're into the reed that bends in the wind. They are very if you live in China, you will often hear Chinese people say that Chinese people are like water. And it took me years to really even start to understand what my Chinese friends meant when they said that. But there's a passage that I took notes on from the Book of the Way that describes water that I think summarizes it really nicely. So this is the 78th chapter, and it says, "Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water, yet for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice." So you'll see again, in Taoism is in some ways very similar to Buddhism, and again they are not separate entities. They really mutually shaped each other. You'll see a lot of this language that sort of starts to echo the Buddhist concept of non-attachment and the importance of why you're doing things, and these ideas that sort of sometimes you have to let go of selfish motivations to achieve what you're trying to achieve in things like that. So I had heard of, I think I heard in my middle school history class, I think I learned what the Tao Te Ching was, but I didn't actually read it until I was in China, locked down during the pandemic. And at that time, I wasn't looking for spiritual wisdom. I was just in a really bad state in addiction. I was locked down to my apartment 24/7 for weeks on end. And I was just sort of looking for cultural background so that I could kind of level up my foreigner living in China game. And I came across this book, and there was this this one line in it. Here, I wrote this down in my notes. Let me just find it quickly. And it read, "Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself?" And that really was like a gut punch to me, because I remember at the time, especially, there was all of this frenetic activity around my addiction. Again, this is pandemic. It's full lockdown in mainland China, and I'm still trying to get deliveries from all these international clinics so I didn't run out of my oxy and my benzos. And I'm thinking, okay, I have to stay on top of my thyroid medicine too. And it's my addiction had me in this constantly harried state where I could hardly ever just sit and think a single thought, or at least the times when I could sit and just be with myself, I was so zonked out that it was a wrap, But I remember reading that line, and I literally got chills, because I was if I just stop using, none of this other shit is gonna matter. All of this other stuff that is constantly pinging around my brain, in the grand scheme is nothing. And if I can just stop using, then literally everything else will sort itself out. And 90% of the stuff that I'm worried about, from money to all the logistics of addiction to my health, that stuff is it's not even gonna become manageable. It's just going to be magically removed from my life, right? I had been sober before. I had felt that change between active addiction and sobriety, or recovery, I should say. And and I knew it, but just hearing that, can you stay still and let right action arise? Basically, can you just stop getting out of your own freaking way after doing the same thing for 3 decades on earth, and let your body and mind heal themselves? That really made a huge impression on me. at the time when I first read the Book of the Way. And again, it was such a contrast to me because I grew up in this very Catholic, conservative environment. And I was so used to, like, we really, it's almost like a form of spiritual abuse. I have a lot of respect for the Catholic religion, I should say. And some of the best people I've known in my life have been devout Christians. So I see what it can add to life. But the way that we practice it, like in modern America, it is so like tinged with, not even tinged, it is so preoccupied with judgment and like hypocrisy and extremism. It's so us versus them that it really turned me off. And it turned me off of spirituality in general for a long time because I had seen how people just use that concept to feel like they were better than you and to manipulate other people into following them. And I wanted no part of it. But like by the time that I got to this state, I was in my 30s. I was like ready not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I was a little bit willing to listen to something that didn't come from that same Abrahamic, Western spiritual paradigm. And crucially, like with Taoism and also Buddhism, like what frustrated me a lot about Christianity was like it doesn't really usually give you a roadmap to spiritual elevation and to getting closer to God. It seems to me like most people spend their lives in like just endless cycles of sin and repent, sin and repent. When something bad happens, give it up to God. Like, what really appealed to me about Eastern spirituality was like you should be meditating every single day to get closer to understanding or like being in, I should say, right action. Like there are concrete things you can do with your diet, with exercises around mindfulness, which I'll talk about later when I talk about the power of now briefly. Like there is an actual roadmap for making your mental and physical state more spiritually elevated, and that hugely appealed to me. And the idea that like I'm not going to go linearly upward in spiritual terms, but like it's not going to be endless sin and repent because I'm inherently evil until I die and possibly go to hell, so it's like that there was something in it that seemed more practical to me, like something I could actually undertake on a day-to-day basis, if that makes sense. And so I started reading a little bit more broadly about the history of Taoism and a little bit more about how, especially in pre-communist China, Taoism was practiced when it was practiced a little bit more formally and more openly. And I had just sort of started doing some of the mindfulness exercises while I was on lockdown during the pandemic that I will talk to you about a little bit more in a minute when I discuss the power of now. But when I read this book, I can't tell you enough that it really like hit me in a way that few spiritual texts have in my life. I realized right away, like there's something in here that could potentially save me. And I had gone for years and years, like kind of looking for a spiritual source that would feel that way to me. I had explored Gnostic Christianity, so-called transcendental or apocryphal Christianity, which emphasizes a direct relationship with God and sort of attaining the kingdom of heaven on earth through good acts and meditation. But this was the first thing that I saw where I saw like this could actually be part of a daily practice that could A, help me with my life-threatening addiction, and B, just make everything else in my life better too. So it felt, I wrote about this in my blog, but it felt a lot when I was reading the Book of the Way, like a really cherished, wise grandmother or grandfather like sat me down at the end of their life and just told me in like 2 hours, like, this is what you need to know about life, in a really kind, really positive way, but also a really honest and direct way. So again, during the pandemic, I start meditating. I start doing like progressive muscle relaxation followed by mindfulness meditation of different types. I'm still using pills like crazy, but like even then I started to see some benefit from that. So I come home, I get on methadone, and I have a little bit of relative stability at that point. And I'm in a meeting and someone mentions this book by Eckhart Tolle, who is I guess spiritual authority. He wrote this book called The Power of Now, and I had heard this book mentioned probably like 8 or 10 times by people who I respected in recovery and rehab in like my mid to late 20s. And I had always had this really like sort of arrogant, disdainful, I'm just being honest, I had like a very arrogant, disdainful attitude toward it. It sounded like, when people would describe it to me in like 3 minutes, it sounded like that very like woo-woo, like sort of California bougie Buddhism, and like it's not that there's anything wrong with that at all, of course. Like everybody in every context, most people, I should say, like the vast majority, are trying for some spiritual meaning, some sense of purpose and where their life comes from and is going. So, I shouldn't be so judgmental about that as I am. But what I have noticed with a lot of the spiritual, like, Oprah approved trends is that it's really just copy pasted from Buddhist philosophy with a lot of the cultural context removed, and that did bother me because like when it's presented as new ideas that have in fact been around for like hundreds or thousands of years, and proper credit isn't given. Like, again, I don't think Buddha would have cared whether he got the shout out in the book dedication, right? So their spiritual ideas, they don't really belong to any one person, but when they are monetized in a certain way, I think it's nice to give credit where credit's do. And I had seen some Western spiritual authorities not do that in the past. So I was kind of like biased against this book for weird reasons that I just did my best to explain. But to his credit, Eckhart Tolle has said there is nothing new in this book at all. It's a simple reformulation of ideas that have been around for a very long time and that mainly come from Eastern spiritual traditions. But as I said, it's the direct sort of conversational tone of the book. It's also the sort of like taking of those ancient theories and putting it in the context of modern life, where I talk about all the time on my channel, like addiction and mental health struggle rates are so high because like we're bombarded with stimuli. We are addicted to the short dopamine hits that we get from social media and from food and other substances that are almost engineered to make us addicted and wanting to go back and back to them. We're just so busy with stupid stuff, a lot of times unhealthy stuff, that like now more than ever we need what the Power of Now talks about. In two words, it talks about mindfulness, and it talks about being present, which are two connected things. I would say, in fact, I would say mindfulness / presence is one major idea, and meditation is the other. So there was this exercise toward the beginning of the book, and if you guys are willing, I would ask you to do it with me now. Okay, so just right now, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you to take a deep breath in and out. Don't worry about anything else. I'm going to say a sentence, and I just want you to look inward and see what comes next. So try not to have any like loud stimuli going on around you. Maybe put headphones in if you're in an environment where there's a lot of ambient noise. But I'm going to do that right now, okay? So close your eyes. Take a single deep breath. So in, out. So say once to yourself, I wonder what thought will come next. Okay, so some people don't react as sort of profoundly as I did to this, but to this day, that exercise is the best thing that I have as a tool to help me clear my mind. And when I did that for the first time, that made me realize like how fucking crazy I had become. Like my older brother describes our family's like state of mind perfectly, but he says it's like having a radio on scan mode. And it really is like that. Like my mind, it's like I do not get a freaking break from the time, first of all, I usually sleep like 2 or 3 hours a night, but right from the time my eyes open until the time I fall asleep, usually about 5 hours after I lay down, like I do not get a single break. And when I finally just had like literally 5 or 6 seconds, maybe it was as short as that, of not having like thoughts ping-ponging around in my head, it was like, holy shit, like even this short of a time period of feeling like that seemed so restful to me. Like I actually felt excited and I actually felt energized afterward, and that blew me away. Like genuinely, I think that might be one of only a couple experiences in my life that I would consider epiphanies, where I really, it made me think about like when I was young, I would go to the book warehouse with my mom. I would come home on a Friday night. I would be reading a long book. I would sometimes sit and read for 9 or 10 hours. I wouldn't even get up to eat or go to the bathroom. And like my mind would be so in that story. It was like I wasn't even there anymore. Like my body wasn't even there anymore. My mind was like, it totally immersing itself in the story, and I wouldn't think of, hear, be distracted by anything else. And I thought about how, like, as I got older, yeah, in college I still really had that ability. I would go to the library and sit down and read, and like, yeah, my friends would comment on how I could get like so intensely involved in whatever I was studying. But like, man, in the years after undergrad in particular, as I got so much more addicted to opioids and benzos, like that ability to be present in the moment completely left me. Like completely left me. Like there was, it's almost like a dissociation, or like a, I don't even know what to call it, but my mind became so scatterbrained and so like disconnected from my body, except when it was worried about like withdrawal symptoms or whatever else, that like it was almost like I was like a free floating, very like manic consciousness, if that makes sense. I don't even know how to describe it, but like deeply unpleasant, deeply unpleasant, and definitely not like, it's not a healthy mental state to be in. And again, I did that exercise, like I wonder what thought will come next, and that little bit of peace that came afterward, it was like right after I felt that, my trusty addictive instincts kicked in, and I was like, I want to feel that again and again. And so I started implementing some of the very basic meditation exercises that are talked about in Eckhart Tolle's book. Again, it's called The Power of Now. And there are things like, some of them have to do with your body and tuning in with what's really going on in your body. Some of them have to do with active meditations, like meditations that you can do when you're walking or when you're washing dishes. But I started really trying to inhabit that mindful plane for at least like 10 or 20 minutes a day, and instead of just doing it all in one block and then forgetting about it, I started trying to bring myself back to it. Like, say I'm teaching and I'm passing out papers before my students walk in, like I started using times like that as like moments to return to a fully mindful state where I'm not worried about what came before and what's coming next, and I'm just focused on like, okay, here's one paper, I'm feeling what it feels like as I put it down on the desk, and so on. And I really have found, like, it's like any other physical or mental skill. Like if you don't practice it, it's not going to be of very much use to you when you need it most. Like you have to kind of condition yourself into being able to slip into this mindful state. But during the times in my life when I have faithfully implemented these mindfulness and meditation exercises, I have seen a really robust, like, useful increase in my peace of mind. It's helped me hugely with the methadone withdrawal symptoms that I'm going through. Like I actually use those techniques most when I'm feeling the most sort of severe withdrawal symptoms. And one of the things I've realized is, like, even when, I get this terrible restless arms and legs where I'm just like literally writhing, like it's not hyperbole to say I'm writhing around on my bed, like I cannot stay still, right? I decrease my dose pretty quickly, and that's one of the consequences, and I just have to live with it. But like when I am really mindful, I can feel like when I like drop into my body, I can feel that like it's not nearly as bad as my mind wants me to believe, because my mind wants me to focus on the anxiety and the dread until it has a reason to go do what it wants to do, which is get high, right? Or at least like my middle and lower mind wants to do that. The higher mind wants to finally get off this freaking carousel, right? But underneath that, when I do the mindfulness exercises when I'm in bad withdrawal, I can feel like there even then when I'm so uncomfortable, I can feel like I'm more alive. I can almost feel like my body's better and healing as much as my mind hates it. I can feel that like my emotions are really turned up too, and that actually feels so good. One of my least favorite parts about maintenance is like I'm a very emotionally intense person, and methadone and to a lesser extent buprenorphine just totally mute me. And I hate that. It feels to me, based on my baseline, that I am less human when I'm like that, and in a certain way it makes it harder to write well, it makes it harder to stay connected to friends and family because like the emotional urgency isn't there. And yeah, so with this mindfulness stuff has really helped me with more than anything is like right now getting through withdrawal symptoms. And just realizing, like, again, for years, my mental state had deteriorated to the point where it almost felt, when I finally started reflecting on how scatterbrained my mind was when I didn't have these heavy depressants on board, it almost felt like, am I like schizophrenic or something? Like, I know I'm not, but like it felt that different from what normal was. And when I thought back, what my normal was when I was younger, and it was really like a shock to me and a push, sort of shoved me in the direction of like, we have to do something about this, or like, I'm gonna go actually crazy, like, if you are like me and you've been doing dope since you're 14, 15, benzos since around the same age, like, you can't abuse your mind forever and expect you're gonna bounce back all the time. Like, people really do just lose it, especially when you factor in brain damage from overdoses, seizures from benzo withdrawal, all of which I've experienced. Like, I am so lucky that I can still function at all, and like, I want to bring my mind and body back to as healthy a state as I can get them in. And when I run, when I do these mindfulness exercises and just keep everything that I have control over in order, it makes a huge difference in my daily life. I am less prone to feeling anxious, I am more focused, and I feel almost like it's a superpower when I'm doing the best that when I am at this level that's the best that I can be at now. Even if it's reduced to the best that I could be at 10 years ago, it feels like it's a superpower relative to like where I am, say, on maintenance, not doing any of this stuff. So it has really benefited me. Again, I guess I could TLDR this video as, please read the Book of the Way, and please consider reading The Power of Now. If you're not a reader, there are a lot of videos of Eckhart Tolle on YouTube where he breaks down this philosophy. I think the book is really useful for the exercises on meditation and mindfulness, but if not, you can find a lot of that stuff on YouTube by searching his name. So anyway, it's something that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, and it's like I felt kind of weird doing it because I'm in no position to give any kind of like spiritual advice or advice on, I'm not a particularly mindful person. I'm not good at meditating. Meditating is very difficult for me. I've said this before on my channel, but my best meditation, like my truest meditation, comes when I'm running. I every other day I run like at least 8 to 10 miles, and after I've been running for a few miles, I'm focused on my breathing, I'm focusing on my stride and my footfalls, and like then sometimes I'll turn my music off once I get to that like runner's high, quote unquote, stage. I'll turn my music off and I'll just focus on my breathing, and I'll just like very keenly focus on my body, almost even to the point of being less aware of my surroundings. And then I will feel like how I imagine very competent meditators will feel. I feel like real peace, and I feel a real mental weight lifted, because this oppressive cloud of thoughts about past and future and possibility and everything else is lifted for a while. So anyway, if any of you have any experience with any of this stuff, I'd be really interested to hear. It is something like I'm trying to level up when it comes to this stuff, because I know that when I'm completely off of maintenance, which is coming before the end of the year, like I'm going to need this even more. So if anyone has any suggestions about any resources like on YouTube or anywhere else that me and anyone else watching this who's interested could check out, I would really appreciate that. And yeah, I love you guys. Thank you so much for the support in the comments. After my last video, I had a couple of people tell me like that I was looking really healthy, and I have thought the same thing a couple of times lately. Like I look a lot less gray and a lot less sort of I look like I have more energy than I did when I was at 203 milligrams of methadone a day, which I looked it up. I think it's equivalent to like 8 grams of oral morphine per day or something insane like that. So not really surprising, right, that going down by this much would help me be healthier, but it's really nice to hear people say that, and to think that it's not just wishful thinking, from within. So I love you guys. I'm always active in the comments and through my email. I've got some really good content coming up. I'm hoping to do 2 interviews with people who have used ibogaine to get off of opioids, either maintenance opioids or street opioids like fentanyl and heroin. And I've got some other really interesting content coming, including part 2 of the Kratom series. I've been editing that forever. I have the raw footage, and I'm just trying to make the added value from the editing better this time. So thank you for being patient, and I will catch you all next time.